The architecture of meaning, decoding, is there not something in everything? The realm of human language is littered with transient observations, poetic musings, and lyrical expressions that seek to capture the fleeting emotions of the human experience. However, beneath this decorative layer of linguistic expression lies a different category of thought, the structural statement. These are not mere poems, they are not lyrics. They are compressed, load-bearing structures. They are the philosophical keystones upon which entire worldviews are constructed and sustained. When an aphorism operates as a load-bearing structure, it does not merely describe reality. It dictates the mechanics of how reality is perceived, processed, and ultimately understood. Among these foundational tenets is a singular, powerful inquiry. Is there not something in everything? At first glance, the phrase might masquerade as a simple rhetorical question or a passing spiritual cliché. Yet, when subjected to rigorous epistemological and existential analysis, it reveals itself as a profound cognitive tool, an organizing principle that fundamentally alters the observer's relationship with the universe. To posit that there is something in everything is to declare an outright war on nihilism, randomness, and existential void. It is the assertion that reality is not a chaotic collision of dead matter, but a deeply interwoven tapestry of significance, signaling, and underlying architecture. This essay will explore the profound implications of this aphorism, examining how it transforms our perception of the mundane, reconfigures our understanding of time and memory, and ultimately constructs a deeply purposeful existence. The aphorism as a load-bearing structure. To understand the weight of, is there not something in everything? One must first understand the concept of cognitive and philosophical architecture. A load-bearing wall in a physical building is one that holds the weight of the structure above it. If it is removed, the edifice collapses. Similarly, a load-bearing philosophical statement is one upon which the integrity of an individual's psychological and existential framework depends. If one adopts the inverse of this aphorism, the belief that there is nothing in anything, that the universe is fundamentally devoid of underlying structure or meaning, the resulting psychological architecture is inherently fragile. It is prone to the collapse of despair, apathy, and isolation. The human mind is fundamentally a meaning-making machine. To starve it of meaning is to introduce systemic structural failure. Conversely, integrating the belief that there is something in everything functions as a reinforced foundation. It acts as a lens of high-resolution reality. The aphorism compresses complex phenomenological concepts into a single, functional heuristic. Pay attention. It demands that the observer stop treating the external world as a passive backdrop and begin engaging with it as an active participant, an encoded matrix of information waiting to be deciphered. It implies that every object, every encounter, and every apparent coincidence contains a latent structural integrity that points to a grander unity. Breaking the somnambulism of the everyday, the red car phenomenon. The practical application of this load-bearing statement begins with breaking the hypnotic trance of daily life. The modern human condition is often characterized by a profound somnambulism, a sleepwalking through routines where the environment is barely registered unless it presents an immediate threat or reward. To test the aphorism, is there not something in everything, one must engage in deliberate exercises of conscious observation. Consider a seemingly mundane scenario, standing at a gas station, observing the traffic. In a state of passive reality, a car is just a car, a utilitarian object moving from point A to point B. However, when the observer activates the structural statement, the environment shifts. Suddenly, anomalies emerge. A red car pulls in, then another, then two more. Suddenly, 4 or 5 red cars are gathered in an environment where they should mathematically represent only a fraction of the vehicular demographic. To the untrained mind, this is dismissed as a statistical fluke, a meaningless clustering of variables. But through the lens of our load-bearing aphorism, this cluster, this synchronicity, serves as a fracture in the facade of the ordinary. It acts as a visual prompt, suggesting that what we perceive as a random sequence of events might actually be governed by unseen forces, or at the very least, that human consciousness has the profound ability to interface with the mathematical probabilities of reality in real time. This is not necessarily about assigning a specific, prophetic meaning to the color red or the specific make of the cars. Rather, the significance lies in the recognition of the pattern itself. It is a mechanism to help us see that the matrix is real, or that there is an order extending far beyond our immediate conscious control. When we look around and consciously track variables, like the color of passing cars, the world begins to reflect our attention back to us. The ordinary becomes surreal. The boundary between the observer and the observed begins to thin, revealing an underlying force of reality that we are swimming through, yet rarely acknowledge. The architecture of retrospection, navigating the tapestry of time with the observation of immediate physical phenomena, like the cars at a gas station, represents the spatial application of, is there not something in everything? Then introspection and memory represent its temporal application. Life is largely lived in the chaotic forward momentum of the present. During the day, the sheer volume of sensory input and immediate demands obscures the broader patterns of our existence. It is only in the quiet hours of the night, when we are kept awake by the echoes of the day's events, that the mind attempts to catalog and organize its experiences. Yet, to truly operationalize the aphorism, one must take this a step further. We are required to engage in the architecture of retrospection. Looking back on one's life is not merely an act of nostalgia, it is an act of structural analysis. When we examine our past through the lens that there is something in everything, previous traumas, apparent failures, serendipitous encounters, and seemingly random diversions begin to align into a coherent narrative. The isolated data points of human experience connect to form a constellation of meaning. The individual begins to realize that the delay which caused them to miss a flight, the arbitrary conversation with a stranger, or the sudden dissolution of a relationship were not random acts of a cruel universe, but necessary structural adjustments in the architecture of their life. Looking back is an essential science. It is the process by which we prove the aphorism to ourselves. Once a person can look back at their timeline and verify that every preceding event contained a hidden lesson or a necessary catalyst, they can face the unpredictable future with an impenetrable sense of trust. Time is revealed not as a linear march toward decay, but as a complex, self-referential design. The internal science, the study of the one and the everything. To dive deeper into the implications of this compressed philosophical structure, we must confront the relationship between the microcosm and the macrocosm, what can be termed the study of the one and the everything. The external observation of signs, numbers, and synchronicities is only half of the equation. The aphorism, is there not something in everything, ultimately forces the gaze inward. If there is something in everything, then there must fundamentally be something within the self. The search for meaning in the external world is intrinsically linked to the discovery of meaning within the internal world. This is an internal science. It is the study of the self as a fractal representation of the entire universe. You cannot fully comprehend the everything without first mastering the one. The core of all things, the universal underlying architecture, is mirrored in the core of human consciousness. When an individual engages in this deep, introspective study, they are not isolating themselves from the world. Rather, they are tapping into the universal network from the inside out. This unified study reveals that the separation between the observer and the external environment is an illusion of human sensory limitations. The forces that govern the clustering of red cars, the synchronization of numbers, and the serendipitous timing of life events are the very same forces that pulse through human consciousness. The study of the one is the prerequisite for reading the language of the everything. It requires faith, intense focus, and a willingness to transcend surface-level phenomena to touch the bedrock of reality. The instant and the infinite. Finding hope in the matrix, perhaps the most vital outcome of adopting this load-bearing statement is its profound impact on human emotional and psychological well-being. A universe of random, chaotic interactions is inherently terrifying. It breeds anxiety, isolation, and despair. However, recognizing that there is something in everything acts as an antidote to existential dread. When an individual truly internalizes this structural truth, they experience what can be described as the convergence of the instant and the infinite. In a single fleeting moment, an instant, they are able to perceive the boundless, infinite architecture of reality. A mundane moment is instantly elevated to the sacred. The aesthetic and emotional payout of this realization is staggering. As one begins to see the interconnectedness of all things, the world transforms into an image of absolute, transcendent beauty. The realization that nothing is wasted, that every detail is accounted for in the grand calculus of existence, provides an unparalleled sense of hope. It grants a profound purpose to life that no external metric of success can replicate. This hope is not a naive, passive optimism that ignores suffering or hardship. Rather, It is a robust, battle-tested faith that acknowledges pain and chaos,